The views and opinions expressed at Enhanced Down Under are those of the hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official views of the company. Any content provided by our hosts are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.
Welcome to Enhanced Down Under. This is the official podcast channel of Enhanced NT. My name is Anna and I am a qualified education agent counselor.
And my name is Jairus and I'm part of the Enhanced NT team.
Alright, so before we jump on our topic for today, let's have a quick recap of our previous episode, which was about the latest changes in the international education. During the episode 17, Jairus, we have discussed 5 key changes in the legislation, which are number 1, increasing the minimum funds requirement or evidence of financial capacity. The second is the higher visa student application fees. At that time, the proposed hike was 2,500. Come July 1, the good news is it's not 2,500, but still it's significantly higher than 710. It's now 1,500, right? So more than double of the previous amount. The third change is the higher English language threshold. So for those who are in vet schools, from 5.5, they increased it to 6. And then for those aiming to get a degree, from 6, they increased it to 6.5. The fourth is subclass 485 temporary graduate visa limits have been changed. The number of years that they are allowed to stay have been reduced. And then the fifth is Australian government has moved to close 2 temporary visa pathways. So if you are a holder of a visitor visa and you just decided to apply for a student visa, you can no longer do that. And then the second is if you are a temporary graduate visa holder, you will no longer be able to apply for student visas from within Australia. So those are the main changes come July 1, right? Okay, so for our topic for today?
So for the topic for today, we'll be mostly talking about the complexities of accommodations. Accommodation is like a big issue right now in all of Australia, not just for students, but we'll focus on the student side. But in general, we do have an accommodation crisis nationwide. Then our second topic is a bit more broad. We'll be talking about a couple of the visa hikes and their implications. And more of the implications of what happens if you apply for your visa offshore and onshore.
Offshore, yes. Yep. Yes. All right, so for accommodation, according to ICEF, or International Consultants for Education and Affairs, the main issues to be addressed in international student accommodation are the 3 A's. Affordability, availability, and accountability. Yeah. Big issues, right?
It is. Especially with affordability. I feel like it's affected, everyone's affected by affordability. Budgets, the amount, how much you pay weekly. Scarcity too, like how many. Yeah. Well, I guess it's part of availability. But affordability is one of the biggest issues because we're not getting like, even just for the normal people, we're not getting massive pay hikes, you know. But true. The cost of living is getting higher, everything is going higher. Yes. And it's not just Australia for the most part, it's worldwide.
It is a worldwide issue.
It's happening in Canada, it's happening in the US, it's happening in majority of the developed nations. So
that's why when you apply for a student visa, you are being asked for an evidence of financial capacity. Yeah. Right? That is to ensure that you are able to support yourself. Yeah. That includes your accommodation. Although most of the clients I've known, they no longer need to get an accommodation or rent because they live with their relatives.
Oh, okay.
So that's that's a plus part.
Yeah.
That's a lot of.
I guess it's
very
that's a
convenient.
nice benefit if you have.
Yes. Yes.
Just for the other unlucky ones, they might not have relatives. They might be studying by themselves, and they have no choice but to live with accommodations given to them. And if you don't know anyone, especially for some of the young kids, like for me, when I did that by myself, I was like past my mid-20s, so I'm a bit more mature with how to go about things. But like for some of the other kids, they're like young,
the
early
younger
20s.
ones.
Like my nephew, he's studying in Canada right now. He's doing his uni in Canada, in Toronto. And he's like, what, 20s? Early 20s, 21, 22. So, you know, like he's not as experienced yet. So he might not know like what to do in a situation of finding accommodations or how to deal with like some of these things. So I think, you know, sometimes they need guidance. Like, it might be better instead of like living in a house, maybe a share house might be better.
Shared.
But they might not think of that solution yet for some.
Yeah, with the affordability, do you have any idea, like, the cost in other major cities, like, let's say, Sydney or Melbourne?
I was looking at it a while ago, and apparently for Sydney, the accommodation costs are, it's gone, there we go. If you're looking for a single bedroom in Sydney, it's $362 a week.
362 a week.
362.
Does that usually include electricity and water?
Normally they don't.
Oh,
yeah.
362 per week.
Maybe they do.
Sometimes they offer.
Yeah. And it depends on the university. So it can go as high as 500 for a studio type.
That's a lot. Here in Darwin,
not including the bond. Bond is normally like 2 weeks, 2 weeks rent. And if you're a student who can't, like
2 weeks rent.
Sometimes.
So yeah, let's say you have to prepare a little an amount of like, let's say $1,000 for the bond.
That's the minimum. So on top of like paying $500 a week, you might be asked to give out $1,000 for 2 weeks bond, and that's the minimum. Some of them ask for a month.
Do you usually get that bond after you finish your?
Well, as long as so in a perfect world. You know, like if there's nothing wrong with the accommodations, if you left it as it is, minus. So there's always.
But that's rare.
Because like there's understood terms of wear and tear. You know.
Okay.
Like even if I've lived in the house for 1 year, there's no way that house will look the same as when I moved in. So there's natural occurrences of wear and tear. Like if the paint fades, there's a little bit of a dirt. That's fine. You're gonna get your bond back. But if they come back and like the door is taken,
the obvious damage,
like the screen doors are like cut off or whatever, then they're gonna take your bond.
Which is reasonable, I think.
They're supposed to take the cost from your bond to that. But for the most part, in a perfect sense, as long as you're an okay tenant, you should get your bond back. I've been lucky enough where I've never moved to a place where I've never got my bond back.
Oh.
But I've known people.
You are a good tenant.
For the most part, you know. I'm not like destroying doors or anything. But, you know, if I've known people who didn't get their bond back. And sometimes it might be a landlord thing. You could have been like the best tenant you can, but some landlords, they're going to find as many holes as they can to make sure that they don't give your bond back.
That's the thing. So here in Darwin, I think you can get an accommodation, a small room only, like for, I'm seeing in Facebook, you know, the announcement for vacancies, 180 to 210. So you already have your own room, but everything else is shared. It's communal. So 180 to 210, that includes electricity and the internet already. And so far, availability is not an issue here. And I think 180 to 210 per week is relatively lower as compared to other major cities. And again, most of the students I've known, they don't require rental accommodation because they have relatives here to support them. Okay, so the second issue, availability. It's getting political.
It is sort of, you know, especially with like the headline for this one is the impact of current housing supply crisis in Australia, with the perspectives from the Group of 8, which is like the major universities in Australia. on
like
why
Monash,
this issue is.
National University.
National University, Monash University,
Yeah.
University of New South Wales, I think. University
Yeah.
of it's all of the 8 big ones.
So the availability has been somehow a political issue because the government or some are blaming the shortage in housing because of the influx of international students.
And the funny thing is, they're not talking about like all these investment properties where there's no one living in it. I think I forgot the exact statistic, but there was a statistic of how many empty houses we have that are just treated as investment properties. Like I think it's in the thousands.
So no one really lives in those houses.
And
but
like,
it was just purchased as an investment.
The criteria was it's not just like an empty house for a year. There's a minimum years before it was.
All right.
What do you call that? Categorized as an empty house. So it's not just like I bought a house for a year and no one lived in it. It's a good amount of years, and it was in the thousands. So we have like these thousands of houses that no one's living in, and they're saying, oh yeah, we have like an availability crisis. We don't have enough homes. We don't have enough resources and all that. But then some landlords they own like 80 properties, 90 properties.
So it's like some properties are being hoarded by only a certain group. Hence, for those who really need it, the bigger chunk, like the students and the skilled workers, they are having difficulty finding accommodation because somehow it affects them.
It's not just students too. Like they're using the students as a scapegoat, but everyone's not. Especially the good thing in Darwin, not as much at the moment, but then for the bigger cities, like. They're saying, oh, we don't have like enough houses. We should build more houses, but they're not saying how many empty houses are there too.
Right, right. So that's the thing. In other bigger cities like Sydney, Melbourne, since it's more populated and a more attractive study destination, people are experiencing housing shortage. So imagine how difficult that is. Like you are ready to study, you're excited to commence with your course, but yet you are still unable to find accommodation. And other than that, of course, you may have the budget, but the thing is, there's nothing available.
I've known some people that So normally there are rules, laws in place on how many people can live in a room or in a house.
Okay.
But I've known people...
usually the landlord imposes it, right? There's only a limited number.
Not just the landlord. Normally, like, there are actual rules in place. Like, if you have, like, let's say a 2-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house. This is an example. I don't know the exact ones. But let's say if you have a 2-bedroom house, the maximum amount of people that can live there is, let's say, 5 or 6. 5. But I've known some people... where accommodation is scarce, or they have no choice but to live because it's closer to the city, they would pack like 8 people per room, 4 people per room.
Per room.
So you could have like one small room and there'd be like 3 bunk beds, then another room, same thing, and then they would share like 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen, and
so it's like you're just bed spacing.
Yeah, but that's not legal here sometimes, depending on like the amount of people.
You can get questioned by the city council.
If someone finds out, if someone dobs on you, if someone like tells,
especially if your neighbors, if you are in a residential area and your neighbors would notice that, there's a lot of people coming in and out of that
and
house.
also just like, I feel like just the condition, your living conditions is not ideal.
Exactly.
If it's like a 2-bedroom house and it's 8 people living there, if you live in Australia, that's not an ideal situation to live in for.
But sometimes when you don't have a choice,
but I've known some people where they had no choice, so they had to go through that. It's either they do that or they live like farther away from, let's say, the uni. Yeah. So they have to factor in the costs of travel. Yeah. And not
transportation costs, the travel time allotted.
And sometimes, like, in some places, what do you call that? Fares are covered if you're a student. Travel is free. But sometimes that doesn't happen. Like if you're unlucky, if you're studying in a place where travel fares aren't free if you're a student, then
so sometimes the government provides the transportation?
No, just they just cover the fees.
Okay.
So it's free buses or free.
Free buses.
Like when I was doing mine,
okay. Yeah, I get it.
my fare was free. I could take the bus anytime. But the problem was where I lived, the buses ends at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Because it was a rural
so no more
place.
transportation available after 5 p.m.
So after 5 p.m. if you miss the bus. Then
I get that free transportation. Here in Darwin, if you are up to grade 12 student, right? Or if you are a student, you don't have to pay for your bus fare.
The bus. Yeah.
My son, he can go around the city without paying anything.
Yeah, but I think for like in Sydney, I don't think all of the trains. Maybe it might be subsidized because like one of our family friends, he studies in Monash, and I think the trams are free in general.
Free for students.
In general, the trams are free. I'm not sure if his what do you call that, fares are subsidized. Normally it should be.
Especially for students and PWDs.
Yeah.
In Darwin, it happens. Subsidized, or they have this concession
fares.
Like the usual fare, for example, for me, it's $3 back and forth, or you can go around anywhere within the city, $3. But if you are a student and up to grade 12, you are free. You don't have to pay for anything. Yeah. But for college students, I believe they are covered by concession fare, which is, if you are going to buy that card, $21 only, and it's already equivalent to 30 trips. So that's not bad. That's less than $1 for each trip. Yeah. That's really a lot of financial help for a struggling student. Yep. Not bad. So here in Darwin, that's the situation. And sometimes, even the bus drivers, they don't ask for fares, especially during Sundays.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I experienced that many times.
That's good.
So yeah,
I think
they're very lenient here.
That's like one of the advantages where, like for the Philippines, our bus drivers, they go on what they call the boundary system.
Boundary, yeah.
So their pay is subjected to how much trips they do in a day.
Yeah.
So some of them, they force as many trips as they can. Versus if you're paid on a salary basis, you don't really care if your bus is full or not.
Yeah.
So even if you do give free rides on a Sunday, you're not like, oh, that's just money out of my pocket. It's more of just you showing goodwill as for a weekend maybe.
Yeah, I experienced that many times. Like when I'm about to hand my fare, the driver would just say, "It's okay, just go on." Thank you. I don't know with other cities. Although when I was in Sydney, it was pretty affordable. Not bad. I think it's less than $1 for each tram ride.
I think, and the good thing for Sydney is they put a cap. So if let's say you've spent $50 in train rides this week or within the past few days, any of your rides after that has no cost anymore.
That's a good incentive.
So it's like an incentive for you to travel more. Because some people, I think at some point, if they kept spending, they'd be like, I don't want to go to the city anymore on the weekends because I'm spending more. But if you've reached the cap, you're not paying for anything anymore. So you have more motivation to go like, oh, I could go to the city because I don't have to pay for the fares anymore.
All right. So, okay, for the availability of accommodation in other major cities, it's really an issue. In Darwin, it's not. And it's way cheaper here. Although, of course, it's up to you to choose which city you'd like. Sydney, of course, is very attractive to international students, but Darwin has become increasingly popular these years. I just noticed, like a lot of people are now, more aware of what Darwin is or where Darwin is located. So, availability of housing, sometimes it could be an issue most of the time. But if you are aiming to become an international student here, we advise that before coming here, do your own research, or it would be best if you'll have a friend or a relative that you can live with, that can provide you housing. So the third issue, accountability. So this is where the agents and even the universities or colleges come in. So it's saying a research shows and suggests actually that education agents like myself should step up in assisting students, which we do. We do. We really, before it's already part of our services where we provide orientation to international students that this is the housing available here or wherever you want, which city you'd be aiming to study. So, in fairness to colleges, especially to our partner schools here, they assist in helping students in finding accommodations for them. Like ICAE, they said that they assist their international students in finding accommodation. Same with other partner schools like Alana K. I think some colleges, they also have this in-house or dormitory.
Yeah,
right?
normally like for a lot of universities and colleges, they do have in-house dormitories to help their students. I think in terms of accountability, I want to add something. I feel like I was lucky where I studied. They gave us a student handbook, which guidelined like student rights, rental rights. So
rental rights.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's
like,
good.
as a renter, like you should know what your rights are. Because sometimes
so you
like,
won't get abused because you may find some landlords
like
who are abusive.
For some people, they feel like, oh, I'm an immigrant here, or like I'm an international student. I don't have like the same rights as other people, so they're easier to get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But I was lucky
they get
enough.
exploited.
Yeah. I was lucky enough where I studied, they handed out handbooks which had like rental rights, property rights. So we knew, or I knew, because I if you read the handbook, I knew what my rights were. So at least I know that I wouldn't be taken advantage of. And even if I do encounter a situation where I feel like it might happen, like I know what to do. So like there were a couple of times that could have happened to us. And if things go south, if you go through the tribunal, for the most part, if you're in the right or if you know what your rights are, the tribunal is going to side with you.
Okay.
Because sometimes we think like if you're an immigrant here, if you go to like the courts, you go through the law, they're always going to side with like the citizen.
Yes.
Even if you're in the right, but that's not how it goes here.
It's very fair.
Yeah, it's fair. Like if like for me back in New Zealand. If you're living in a proper accommodation based on the rental laws, you should be given a receipt of your payment every depending on what your payment terms are. So if you live in like in an what do you call that? If you live in a rental where it's not registered and you're not getting receipts, that's technically illegal.
Yeah.
So if the landlord, let's say, wants to kick you out, and he makes a reason of why he wants to do it, and you want to go to tribunal, you want to go to the court, you can say, look, what you're doing is illegal. You're not giving me receipts, you're not showing me anything. So the tribunal is going to side with you. Be like, it could be a case of the landlord taking advantage of an international student and all that. So that's why it's important to at least know your rental laws, your accommodation laws and all that.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
So I think here in Australia, particularly in Darwin, the landlords are also fair.
Yeah.
Like this one, the Stewart Park Rest House. It's it's just a small place aimed to accommodate backpackers, but they issue receipts. In fairness, they have this invoice. It's an evidence of your payment.
Yeah.
So that's good, and also universities they have these in-house dormitory. You have an option to avail that, but of course there are ups and downs. There are pros and cons of a university or a college provided accommodation versus private accommodation. So, well, for the university managed accommodations, the benefits, of course, proximity to campus. You have experienced living in a college dormitory, right?
Yeah. So when I did my master's, I lived for the first fourth of it. I lived in for the university dorm, the managed dorms, and I feel like one of the advantages would be just the mix of everyone. Like even if people outside your course, people outside what you're studying, you get to meet them. It's a mix of cultures, Like it's my first time seeing like how people like cook their food, how people socialize. And then normally we have like a common room where you all get to hang out.
In the common room.
Especially like if you live in a cold place. So we all hang out by the fireplace. by the heaters, you know, because it's cold.
I'm imagining it.
Yeah.
I'm picturing like the Harry Potter thing. They have this common room.
Especially like when I got there, it was the winter time, so it was like 1
During
degree,
winter.
2 degrees. So everyone's like just huddling up in the fireplace, drinking coffee, you know, drinking like hot chocolate and everything. And then sometimes, you know, like that's how you get introduced to people. Like, what are you doing here? Like, where are you from? And all that. So that's a good way to kind of branch out. To kind of figure out, like, you know, especially if you're a new student, if it's your first time. And you're a young kid, you're scared, let's say you've never done this before. So you get put into an environment where you're in the same place with everyone. A lot of them are either young kids too, or they're international students. So you're all coming from the same place of, you know, like you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you meet someone there who's been there for like a year now, and they tell you, oh yeah, do this, do that, you know. So it's a good way to kind of I feel like it's the best way to experience unis for me, for the most part, you know. Like, do that first, and then if you want to move out eventually after, that's good. But I feel like it makes the experience more complete if you can do that.
Yeah, you get that feel of belongingness.
Yeah,
that's the thing, and the proximity to campus. Usually, it's like 5 minutes away.
Like with mine, it was like a 5-minute walk. And it depends on some places. With me, I would go through like this massive field of football fields and all that. So it was a nice walk every morning, but not as nice if it's like -5 degrees sometimes. You'll be
freezing cold. Here in Darwin, you won't experience a freezing cold.
You won't
Although we also have our version of winter or cold season here, but you won't be freezing. I think the lowest that we experienced here is 14, 12
sometimes,
in other places, or 11. Yeah.
So
but it's not freezing cold.
For us here, it's just 2 seasons, like the tropical countries. You know, the wet season, the dry
cold,
season.
But you won't freeze. Don't worry. So just like what you mentioned earlier, community and networking opportunities. Those are one of the advantages of you are living in a in a university or college managed dormitories. Plus also the safety and security. Yeah, you are like within the compound of the school, so you're somehow secured.
You're safe from your non-students.
From non-students. So you have to look after your watch your back for.
No, because like some other places, you know, like sometimes kids. If you live with kids,
typically
kids steal your food, might something like
usual.
that. You're
sometimes they get confused. I think sometimes those kids, they don't intend to steal. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just they get lazy going out because maybe it's so cold outside. So just like what you shared earlier before our recording, someone just took the opportunity, took the liberty to get your loaf of bread.
Yeah, so I think I've been stolen food twice. Only twice. I'm happy with that. Someone stole a loaf of bread, like half a loaf of my bread, and I think someone stole my can opener, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But a can opener's like $1, so
little things like that.
Like,
but at least you're within the compound of the school.
Nothing dangerous, you know.
Nothing dangerous.
When I got there, I asked like the landlord, the student manager, like, what are the dangers here? You know, like, oh, he told me don't go here, don't do that, and I asked him like, what type of danger are you talking about? Like, am I gonna get killed? And he laughed at me and like, nothing like that happens here. The most that could happen is like someone maybe tries to sell you drugs, you know, but nothing dangerous really. You're not gonna get stabbed or anything. Like, oh, all right.
You won't get mugged.
Yeah.
So some of the challenges could be the higher cost, right? So it could be more costly as compared to a private. Especially now
with the rising prices.
And of course the limited availability. So you cannot expect that you can get a lot of vacant rooms. For you,
it's either the vacant rooms or you might not get rooms that you want. So like with me, when I started, like my first couple of days, I lived with a roommate. I was supposed to live with a roommate because when I inquired like months prior, there were no single rooms available. So that was supposed to be my first experience living with, because I've never lived with a roommate before.
Oh, right.
So that would be my first experience living with a roommate.
Some, of course, they prefer not to live with a roommate. They prefer to have their own space, their own bedroom.
Luckily enough, like me, that's what I wanted originally. I didn't mind living in a dorm. I don't mind living in a communal space.
But at least you have to have your own room.
But I wanted like a room for myself.
Yes, same.
Yeah. So luckily enough, like after a couple of days, I think my roommate moved out.
Did you scare your roommate?
another room opened up, you know.
Oh, that's why.
Happily enough, I didn't scare him. Yeah, he was from Chile. He moved to a different room because he wanted to room with his best friend.
And of course, if you are live within the university, there's less flexibility for you.
Yeah.
Like, I think the curfews are imposed.
We didn't have curfews, but one of the less flexibilities would be the communal kitchens. Communal kitchens, communal bathrooms. Like bathrooms for genders were separated at least, but we all shared one toilet. I mean, like one communal kitchen. I mean, communal bathroom. So if you go to the bathroom, it'd be like 6 showers, 6 toilets, 6 sinks or whatever. And you know, like the good thing is they get cleaned every day. It's not like it's messy.
All right.
Yeah, we have cleaners every day that cleans the.
So you are not required to like clean as you go.
Not really.
All right. So you have less flexibility because some students who prefer less restrictive environment, they don't go for university managed accommodation because those type of accommodations they have stricter rules regarding visitors, the noise levels, especially in the communal areas. As for the private providers, there are purpose-built student accommodations, and there are also private rentals available. Of course, the benefits, it could be less expensive. It depends on the type of room or the type of space that you are availing. So, potential cost savings, of course, if it's less expensive.
Yeah.
Right? So, especially if you're the only one supporting yourself.
So, like the good thing normally if you live in the bigger cities too, is what they do is they try to make sure that if you live in these accommodations, you're always close to like a Woolies or a Kohl's. Especially they have like Kohl's Express or like the smaller Woolies, so it's not like the big ones.
So the Kohl's Express. It's like, what do you call this? Like convenience store.
It's like a convenience store version. So at least anytime you need to go out for food, you can buy some. Not like with mine. Mine it was like a 30-minute walk away. If you had to go to the
30-minute walk.
Yeah, like it was okay if it's during, you know, like it's not if it's cold, it's okay. You're not sweating, you're not going through all of that, but it's sometimes that's one of the things you have to think about too with your accommodations, you know, like what are the surrounding areas, can you buy food there, like is there anything accessibility, are you close to a train station? Those are some of the things you have to think about with.
Yeah, one of the advantages also is the access to urban amenities. Like most of the private accommodations, they are located in city centers. Like, you know, giving students easy access to urban amenities like shopping centers, like what you mentioned, Woolies or malls, or even bars.
Sometimes, especially for kids.
Especially for students, you know, when during Friday night or after, you know, when the school break is nearing, they want to
hang out, you know.
Hang out. So those are, you know, one of the advantages of getting private accommodation. And so, however, if you are aiming to become an international student here, you may seek the assistance of your university or college about accommodation, or your agent about seek their help, seek their advice on where to get the best accommodation for you, and that would of course depend on your budget and preference. All right, so on our next topic, which is the significant visa fee hikes and its impact to the future of international education in Australia. Right. So when we recorded our previous episode, at that time, the new visa hike, the new visa fee was not yet implemented. It was still 710, but even at 710,
that was expensive.
It was still expensive. Australia is still one of the most expensive.
I think at the moment we're the most expensive, right?
At the moment we are the most expensive. So before July 1, a research institute suggested that the visa fee increased to 2,500. So it was a research institute in Melbourne. And the rationale behind is to assist poorer Australians who are struggling.
To offset the cost for poorer Australians.
Yes. And I think to deter international students from coming here, because they're aiming to limit the number of migrants in Australia. Because, again, they blame the students or the temporary migrants for the shortage, the influx of students and temporary migrants. They blame them for the shortage of housing and, somehow issues with the economy. So, come July 1, although the increase was not 2,500.
They've still increased it to 1,600.
Yes.
So that's more than double.
More than double. That's still a lot of money. And again, that's non-refundable, right? Non-refundable. And so, what is the implication in international education in Australia? With our partner schools, they are actually worried that in the coming months, they won't be able to get new students anymore, new international students. That's why they are now hoping or relying on domestic students, local students. And they are not expecting to get international students because, the visa fee, it deters people, potential international students from applying. For you, example, if you have a relative, would they want to gamble?
Like if given the choice between the other countries, one costs 1,600 versus I'm not sure how much it would cost in the US or in Canada, but the price would deter me a lot. Like if you like, the only reason I would want to study in Australia is because I really want to go to Australia. Like if you hand me out like these 3 countries and they're all in even terms and you're looking at the prices, you would think, why would I go to Australia if it's cheaper to study in the UK or maybe in Canada, versus like you need to have like a specific reason of why you want to go here. Which is actually, to be honest, it's a really good place to live too. But sometimes money will always be an issue. Like what your financial capacity would be an issue if like 1,600 is expensive. That is expensive.
The international education peak bodies, they are actually saying that, why are you blaming the housing issues
on students
when this has already been an issue way before the influx of international students?
It doesn't help when you know that some landlords, like in Sydney, they have like 80 properties. 80 properties, and not all of those properties are fully accommodated. Instead of those properties going to people actually need houses, and then you would hear like some people auctioning houses for like $1 million, $2 million. It's not accessible to the average person anymore, and everyone buying it would be like foreign investors, where they don't live in those accommodations anymore. It's not like some countries are starting to fight back. I think with New Zealand, if you're a foreign investor, you have to live in the house now. And then recently with Spain, I think they've just cut more than 1,000 Airbnb properties now. They have to give back. Like you can't have an Airbnb property anymore. At that,
Airbnb is usually being rented.
I don't know what the specific regulations are, but I think more than 1,000 Airbnb rentals are being turned into accommodations now. So some of the countries are trying to fight back with housing crisis. I don't think, me personally, as an opinion, I don't think the students are at fault for this, because
in my opinion too.
No, not a lot of students I know buy houses.
Yeah,
everyone's either renting.
They usually settle for communal areas because of the budget issues.
Like everyone's like renting, everyone's sharing. Like the crux of like the whole situation for the housing crisis is the pricing of it at all and everything.
So that's why, the stakeholders, they're saying that Australia is starting to become hostile to potential international students. And those students has started to steer away from Australia. And they go to more friendly countries, more welcoming countries, they say, like US. And from what I read, Korea, South Korea.
Oh, really?
They're attracting more international students now, and Japan is aiming to, double to boost their international students. Although, of course, the downside, those countries that I mentioned, they are non-English speaking countries.
Yeah, language barrier will be an issue.
Yeah. So I can't imagine myself. I need to learn the language to be able to adapt, because that's how would you be able to live in the city, right? Yeah, but of course that's another thing. But Australia being usually before very welcoming to students, to international students, now with the latest visa policies, it has started to deter people from considering Australia as the next study destination. So the reason of the Department of Home Affairs about that is they want to maintain the integrity of the education system, which is, of course, they have all the right to do so, being the gatekeeper of their country. Right? Because you mentioned before that there are diploma mills, the fly-by-night universities that they just issue diplomas just for the sake of, you have a diploma in Australia, but
just to get what do you call that? Education. What do you call it when you get education from Australia?
Well, it's prestigious, of course, that you have this. It gives you more credibility.
I think for some visas they require you to have Australian-based education.
Yes.
That's what
example,
they use it for.
You want to have a skills assessment. If you are aiming for a skilled visa or a permanent residency, you have to have this Australian education. There are some requirements. So
and they use that as a front.
They just issue it, and then some, of course, as the department has noticed, they just rely on working. They don't come here as a genuine student, but they come here primarily to work, which is that's
like your purpose here was to study.
Yeah,
you didn't come here to work, which I understand. That's why they gave regulations before. Was it? Back in my day, it was 40 hours a week.
40 hours. Now it's 48 hours per week.
Yeah.
I don't know, per fortnight. 24 hours per week. Combination for 2 weeks, it's 48 per fortnight, which is not bad.
That should be enough to pay for rent, pay for your food,
Yeah, for your sustenance. Anyway, before coming here, you know how expensive or costly it is to live and study in Australia. Hence, you were asked to present funds to make sure that you have the capacity to support your living, or your sponsor or your parents have the financial capacity to support your study and tuition fees, right? So with the current changes so far, after speaking with our partner schools, the worry is there. In the coming months, where would we be? Of course, they're worried about it might result to job loss for some of their staff.
Yeah, that's possible. Especially if they're dependent on the influx of international students. If it's not the same as before, then they might have to close down. They might have to rethink how they're going to do their business now. So that is that could be a big hit for the industry.
Yeah, but anyway, hopefully the situation would improve in the coming months, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be it.
Yep. So thank you for joining us on this video podcast.
Yeah, whether you are an international student aspiring to study abroad or a professional looking to work in Australia, it is essential to seek advice, stay informed, and embrace the opportunities that migration brings.
Here at Enhanced Down Under, we'll help you choose the right path for your career goals. Up until next time.